Hey, let's start with some news last week. You had been saying for some time that Alabama was looking to add a defensive lineman in this class to be eligible to play 2018. We were looking initially at the grad transfers, but Alabama was able to find a junior college guy with 3 years to play too. Tavita Musica, who comes in from the College of San Mateo out in California. Now, listen, this guy's a load. 6'1", 6'2". I've seen him listed anywhere from 320 to 360, but he's got long arms for a guy who's not real tall, 33.5-inch arms, which is equivalent to someone who's 6'5". He's strong at the point of attack. I guess I say all that because I'm curious as to a guy that has this type of ability and looks like a guy, kind of a plug-and-play guy, why he was still available this late in the process. Have you been able to find anything out on that, Rodney?
Well, sometimes, Gary, these junior college players, it's about when are they going to be eligible. A lot of these schools now want to get them in early in December so they can go ahead and go through spring practice and so forth. So that's a key factor sometimes. But, I think that Alabama found a guy here that is going to give them a really, when you talk about depth, and a guy who can come in and play 10, 12, 15 snaps a game, that's a key contribution right there. And he's a guy that plays in the interior. They really need a guy that can kind of play over that nose, and he's a guy that can do it. He's Coach Tim Tullock at College of San Mateo, where he plays. Actually, Coach Tullock's their defensive coordinator. He said he's 6'1.5", 350 right now. I don't know what his ideal playing weight is, but he's certainly a guy that can eat up some space inside. He's got really good feet. I think Alabama feels like he moves well. He's got some agility, and so again, I think when you look at it, it's an outstanding pickup.
Tosh Lupoi has done an incredible job recruiting, and now, of course, he is the defensive coordinator. But this is another case of him having strong West Coast ties, really strong ties with that coaching staff. And, that's sometimes what it takes is you just got to have coaches on your staff who have, sources all over the country and ties all over the country. This is what this Alabama staff does. They've got ties to different pockets of the country that produce football players, and certainly Tosh Lupoi, with his West Coast ties, has been a valuable recruiter for Alabama, and this is the latest opportunity for it to bear fruit for the Crimson Tide, bringing in a guy that's this good a player this late in the process.
Yep, Tosh is one of the best in the country. There's no question. He has strong ties. Obviously, he played at Cal, and he has a lot of strong ties on the West Coast. He really relates well to kids out there, so he does a tremendous job. His knowledge in terms of, his relationships with coaches, not only in the high school level, but in junior colleges, certainly is very strong out there. And, I think Alabama's even added some more presence on the West Coast with Jeff Banks, who recruited that area for Texas A&M, did a great job, one of the top recruiters in the country, and he established a lot of great relationships out there and has some contacts. So, yeah, I think it's amazing that Alabama can go out there and find players and get really good ones. Obviously, some extremely highly recruited players, Najee Harris being one of those. And then find a guy like Tavita Musica, who is, like we said, I think, Gary, when you're talking about a need, this really fills a big need.
Yeah, when you lose Deron Payne and Josh Frazier, and that, I guess, is the expectation with his build, that he's going to be an inside guy, either on the nose right over the center or certainly right there, between the guard and the center. And that's, as you said, when you lose two players of that quality, and that's what I guess makes this pickup so amazing is that, this is a spot where you could rearrange some guys, and I know Alabama's got some players. Fadarian Mathis is one, but sometimes those shorter, squattier guys do a little bit better in that particular role, don't you think, Rodney?
Yeah, I think it's leverage. I think leverage certainly has something to do with it. He's got that, really good build for that. And, I think that when you look at Alabama's defensive front right now, this certainly his body in there gives a little bit more, I guess you could say, gives you a little bit more opportunities to use Bugs and Raekwon Davis in different ways. And it certainly alleviates some of the pressure, I think, having to have a guy inside that maybe isn't quite that same fit that you're talking about. So, but Isaiah Bugs and Raekwon Davis have had really big springs so far, Gary. They had great off seasons, and I think that They've kind of carried it over into spring practice these first 5 days. Those guys right there, I think I would really keep an eye on both those guys because they have an opportunity right now, I think, to really take that next step. And if what I'm hearing is correct, that they're kind of taking the tiger by the tail, so to speak, this could be really big for Alabama's defensive front.
Do you think Alabama's done? Because I know they've still got a couple scholarships available for 2018, and maybe not in terms of a junior college player, but a graduate transfer, which would only be in for 1 year, and then that scholarship is recycled in the next recruiting class. Do you think Alabama still might look at a quarterback since Garrett Minshew's going to Washington State, or possibly another defensive player? Do you think there's an opportunity that Alabama still might add another player for this particular season, or do you feel like they're probably done?
Well, I haven't heard that they would, but they would never. I'm pretty sure that they would never rule out anything if they came across a player that they felt like could contribute to them and fill a role that they really need. So I wouldn't say that the door is totally closed. I haven't heard that they'll add another player. So I guess if time goes on and they feel like they find somebody that can fill one of those roles, they would certainly take.
Rodney Orr, our guest here on the Bud Light Hotline on the Gary Harris Show, talking Alabama football. Alabama practice Thursday. They'll go back out tomorrow. 10 practices to go. A little bit different this year. In the past, Saban's held a practice or two before spring break. He didn't do that this year, but yet right here they get a 5-day break for Easter. Do you like that? You think it'll serve the players well?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think that it seems to be a really focused group. Because now they have a chance with Easter over, Gary. They've got 5 practices down. They've got 10 more to go. I think they've been very focused. It seems like everything I'm hearing is really positive. Some of the big issues that over the first 5 practices, obviously we knew about the secondary was going to be something that would be a focus of the spring. Everything sounds pretty good about the way players are developing back there. You got corners and safeties that need to be replaced. You've got all the other packages that they use, the star position, the money, all of those things, players in the secondary that have to fill those roles. So, it sounds like everything's going really, really well there. Obviously, I think spring practice sometimes you forget about, you don't have your whole team there. There's some guys that are coming in, in summer that certainly will make it a lot better, once you get to fall camp. But right now, it sounds like everything is going really, really well.
Rodney Orr, you're certainly a historian of the program, and you and I get together all the time and talk about, remember that game in 1974 or that game in 1983 or whatever it may be. And before this era of neutral site games, it was all about home and home. It was all about trying to get a series with Notre Dame or Penn State or whomever it may be, Nebraska, Southern Cal. A lot of discussion in the last week about maybe Alabama looking to go back to that because of the fact that, fans who pay all this money, not just for tickets, but priority, with the Tide Pride and help fund the program, want to see somebody come into Tuscaloosa. I think the neutral site games have been great for Alabama. You and I would agree with that, but now there seems to be a feeling that, hey, we want to see somebody come to Bryant-Denny again and see Alabama go on the road for one of these big road trips. Do you like the fact that Alabama's in discussions with the likes of Texas and Notre Dame and maybe some others to get one of these big home-and-home series back on the schedule in the future?
Yeah, I think that's nice. I like it. I mean, I would sure like to see it happen within the next couple of years if it could happen, but it doesn't seem like maybe that would be possible. But I'd like to get those teams over here while Nick Saban's really on his, strong run. I think that would be fantastic if you could make that happen. But I like the neutral site games. I'm one that really kind of likes.
I do too. I've enjoyed
games. them. I hope they don't go away. To be honest with you, I would like to continue to do that. I think it's good to open the season in a neutral area where you're playing a big name opponent. It's almost like a bowl game atmosphere to start the season, or a huge game certainly. So I really like those too. But the home and home, if you can get a USC, a Notre Dame, a Texas, and Oklahoma, those would be some very attractive games, obviously.
When you look at the schedule for this year, Rodney, and you have to play them one at a time, and you don't know how the season's going to unfold. There may be a team on there that you don't think is going to be very good, and all of a sudden they surprise you. But just looking at it on paper, they open up with Louisville and Orlando. Alabama's a 4-touchdown favorite or better in that one. They have Auburn at home. They have A&M at home. They do go to Baton Rouge. They go to Knoxville. But again, I mean, you play them one at a time. But you just look at that schedule on paper, and you're sitting there thinking 12-0. I think if you're an Alabama supporter, I mean, it's like who's going to beat the Tide this year?
Well, again, we saw a lot of things happen last year that certainly could have wrecked the team. With all the injuries that Alabama had. So it's like you said, that's a long way off. Like a guy like Bobby Petrino in an opener. Obviously, they lost their quarterback, but he's a guy that always has good offenses. Right out of the gate, you're having to go up against a team like that, and you never really know. I mean, I think one thing this Alabama team is going to have to battle a little bit is the hype is going to be really, really big. You know that. I mean, it's like you just said. Everybody's already kind of expecting to, wherever the playoffs are this year, they've already made their reservations because they expect to be undefeated and be there. So I think that, obviously the hype is going to be one thing that this team is going to have to, I think, battle all year.
Offensively, there's been so much focus on the quarterback position and what's going to happen there with Tua and with Jalen that there has not been too much discussion about the offense as a whole, Rodney. And you do have a new coordinator, and I know Mike Loxley's been on the staff, but he's now calling the plays, and he's got a big background in the spread option. And then you've got Dan Enos, who comes in as your associate head coach and your quarterbacks coach, and he's got a background in a pro-style attack. So now you're looking at a new coordinator, a new quarterbacks coach, two guys that I would think, just looking from the outside in, have differing philosophies. How do you think this offense will come together? Do you think there'll be elements? I know Nick Saban always wants to be known as a pro-style offense from the standpoint of recruiting and sending guys on to the NFL. But do you think you could see elements? And I guess we have seen elements of both the last few years. But do you think you see elements of both pro-style and spread option with this new offensive coaching system?
Yeah, I would think so. I certainly would. I know that. When you look at, Loxley certainly has a reputation as more of a spread guy, as you said, and he's had a lot of success as running the football. They led the Big Ten, I think, a couple of years as running the ball when he was at Illinois, and then he had some success there also. Led the Big Ten in passing one year as well, and so his offenses have put up some good numbers, fairly well balanced, but they do more. I guess they're known as up tempo and some spread, but yeah, I think you can certainly utilize all of those things as we've seen in the past. And, Dan Enos is very, very strong at developing quarterbacks. I thought he did a great job with those Allen brothers at Arkansas. And I think it's probably going to be a really good combination when you look at it with all the players that Alabama has. I mean, man, they're loaded at wide receiver. That they've got some really, I think, excellent tight ends and a couple of young ones that I think are going to be really good. They've got some really, look at the offensive line, could be one of their better offensive lines in the last few years. Obviously, the running backs are loaded with Damian Harris coming back. And then the quarterbacks. So, this is an offense that, again, I go back to what I said about the season as a whole. There's a lot of hype surrounding it. There's a lot of hype surrounding this offense. There's a lot of expectation. But there's some new parts there, and I think they're going to have to develop. But if they can put it all together, they certainly have the potential, the players, to be really, really good and very, very productive.
There's no doubt. And on defense, again, we're focused on, getting some guys in on the defensive line. Obviously, the secondary is going to have to be reworked. But from a leadership standpoint, Rodney, that's so critical. And you lose a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick, Rashaan Evans, Ronnie Harrison. Those guys weren't just great football players athletically and physically. They were leaders of your defense. Deron Payne, too. I know that's part of the natural evolution of a college football program, but you're not only looking to replace talent on that side of the ball, you're looking to replace guys who who led your team, not just your defense, but your team. Who do you think on the defensive side of the ball can step up and be that guy or a couple guys?
You know, we say that every year, and last year I was really concerned. They lost 7 of them, that Jonathan Allen, you know, all of those guys, Dalvin Tomlinson, Reuben Foster, so many guys that were great leaders, Eddie Jackson. You could go on and on and on, and you wondered, how are they going to recover? Ryan Anderson's another one that you'd want to mention. So many of those guys that lost to the NFL, and then you come back this year and you say those guys they lost, and it's the same thing. Now the question is, like you said, who are the guys that step up? Well, it sounds like to me that where we are right now, some guys that are ready to step up, ready to take that next step, would be guys like Isaiah Buggs, Raekwon Davis. Like, they've put in the effort. They've kind of been the leaders in the offseason for those guys up front. Terrell Lewis, you know, this is his opportunity to step up. You've got Christian Miller, who's been in the program now going on his 5th year. Great kid, great guy to have in the program. You know, I think he'll be a tremendous leader for these younger guys. Anthony Jennings, you know, so many guys. Thinking on the inside, this is Mack Wilson. I think you'll see him take that next step. In the secondary, it's obviously very, very young. I mean, you're talking about a guy, Deontay Thompson, who started, the last 2 games in the playoffs, and he's probably your veteran back there. So he seems to be, he had a couple of great games, but now he's got to kind of take on that leadership role back there. Trevon Diggs has been around a while. He started a few games here and there. Started the opener last year against Florida State, but he still doesn't have a ton of experience. So there are some question marks, but it seems like, Gary, they've got great players, great attitudes, and a lot of these guys are just kind of waiting to be the next kind of guy, I guess you could say, and kind of take the bull by the horn.